Hi everyone, good morning. It's Wednesday. I did all my Mark Watches reviews, so now it's time for me to start work on next week's Mark Reads. I'm gonna start with Color Magic because he let go. Where did he go? Where did Rince? I need to know. I need to know right now. So this is for Anna. This is the ninth section of the Color of Magic. Oh Lord, oh Lord. Two Flower grabbed the bars and pulled himself up. See anything? Said Harun from the region of his feet. Just clouds. Harun lifted him down again and sat on the edge of one of the wooden beds that were the only furnishings in the cell. Bloody hell, he said. Don't despair, said Two Flower. I'm not despairing. I expect it's all some sort of misunderstanding. I expect they'll release us soon. They seem very civilized. Harun stared at him from under bushy eyebrows. He started to say something, then appeared to think better of it. He sighed instead. And when we get back, we can say we've seen dragons, Two Flower continued. What about that, eh? Dragons don't exist, said Hrun flatly. Goddess of Chimeria killed the last one 200 years ago. I don't know what we're seeing, but they aren't dragons. What? But... Oh my god. But they carried us up and... You rode on the back of a dragon and you're like, they don't exist. Oh, I can't do this. Sorry, but they carried us up in the air. In that hall, there must have been hundreds. I expect it was just magic, said Hrun dismissively. But they look like dragons, said Two Flower, an air of defiance about him. I always wanted to see dragons ever since I was a little lad. Dragons flying around in the sky, breathing flames. They just used to crawl around in swamps and stuff, and all they breathed was stink, said Hrun, lying down in his bunk. They weren't very big, either. They used to collect firewood. I heard they used to collect treasure, said Two Flower. And firewood. Hey, Hrun added, brightening up. Did you notice all those rooms they brought us through? Pretty impressive, I thought. A lot of good stuff about, plus some of those tapestries have got to be worth a fortune. He scratched his chin thoughtfully, making a noise like a porcupine shouldering its way through gorse. Have you ever heard what a porcupine sounds like? You should look up. There's a really great video of... Is it a porcupine eating like a squash or something? I feel like I should look that up, and I'm gonna make... Nope, I'm gonna do it now. Fuck it. Sorry, Anna, this is your video. What sound does a porcupine make? Come on, there's like a great... There's a great video. I'm sure it'll be one of the first one. Oh, what? Baby porcupine? I wasn't ready for that. That's not a sound. There it is. It's like a little whine. It's too much. Okay, I actually should read this book. Okay, now that I've done that, where are we? What happens next? Asked Two Flower. Hrun scratched a finger in his ear and inspected it absently. Oh, he said, I expect in a minute the door will be flung back, and I'll be dragged off to some sort of temple arena where I'll fight maybe a couple of giant spiders and an 8-foot slave from the jungles of Klatch, and then I'll rescue some kind of princess from the altar, and then kill off a few guards or whatever, and then this girl will show me the secret passage out of the place, and we'll liberate a couple of horses and escape with the treasure. Whew. Hrun leaned his head back on his hands and looked at the ceiling, whistling tunelessly. All that? Said Two Flower. Usually. Two Flower sat down on his... I need to take a moment. I feel like he just made fun of every fantasy quest narrative ever. I love it. Two Flower sat down on his bunk and tried to think. This proved difficult because his mind was awash with dragons. Dragons! Ever since he was 2 years old, he had been captivated by the pictures of the fiery beasts in the Octarine fairy book. His sister told him they didn't really exist, and he recalled the bitter disappointment. The world didn't contain these beautiful creatures. He decided it wasn't half the world it ought to be. That is great. And then later he'd been bound apprentice to Ninereed's the master account, who in his grey-mindedness was everything that dragons were not, and there was no time for dreaming. But there was something wrong with these dragons. They were too small and sleek compared to the ones in his mind's eye. Dragons ought to be big and green and clawed and exotic and fire-breathing, big and green with long, sharp... Something moved at the edge of his vision, in the furthest, darkest corner of the dungeon. When he turned his head, it vanished, although he thought he heard the faintest noises that might have been claws scrabbling on stone. Hrun, he said. There was a snore from the other bunk. He already went to sleep? Well, of course, he's got to prepare for his little quest journey thing he's going on. Two-Flower padded over to the corner, poking gingerly at the stones in case there was a secret panel. At that moment, the door was flung back, thumping against the wall. Half a dozen guards hurtled through it, spread out, and flung themselves down on one knee. Their weapons were aimed exclusively at Run. When he thought about this later, Two-Flower felt quite offended. Run snored. A woman strode into the room. Not many women can stride convincingly, but she managed it. What does that mean? That's terrible. She glanced briefly at Two-Flower as one might look at a piece of furniture, then glared down at the man on the bed. She was wearing the same sort of leather harness that the dragon riders had been wearing, but in her case it was much briefer. That and the magnificent mane of chestnut red hair that fell to her waist was her only concession to what even on the Discworld passed for decency. She was also wearing a thoughtful expression. Run made a glubbing noise, turned over, and slept on. With a careful movement, as though handling some instrument of rare delicacy, the woman drew a slim black dagger from her belt and stabbed downward. Oh my god. Before it was halfway through its arc, Run's right hand moved so fast that it appeared to travel between 2 points in space without any time occupying the intervening air. It closed around the woman's wrist with a dull smack. His other hand groped feverishly for a sword that wasn't there. Run awoke. He said, looking up at the woman with a puzzled frown. Then he caught sight of the bowman. Let go, said the woman, in a voice that was calm and quiet and edged with diamonds. Run released his grip slowly. She stepped back, massaging her wrist and looking at Run in much the same way that a cat watches a mouse hole. So, she said at last, you passed the first test. What is your name, barbarian? Who are you calling a barbarian? Snarled Run. That is what I wanted to know. Run counted the bowman slowly and made a brief calculation. His shoulders relaxed. I'm Run of Chimeria, and you? Liessa Dragon Lady. Oh, it's Liessa. You are the lord of this place. That remains to be seen. You have the look about you of a hired sword, Run of Chimeria. I could use you, if you pass the tests, of course. There are 3 of them. You have passed the first. What are the other... Run paused. His lips moved soundlessly, and then he hazarded 2? Perilous. And the fee? Valuable. Excuse me, said Two-Flower. And if I fail these 2 tests, said Run, ignoring... he doesn't say 2, sorry. The air between Run and Liessa crackled with small explosions of charisma as their gazes sought for a hold. If you had failed the first test, you would now be dead. This may be considered a typical penalty. Look, began Two-Flower. Liessa spared him a brief glance and appeared actually to notice him for the first time. Take that away, she said calmly and turned back to Run. 2 of the guards shouldered their bows, grasped Two-Flower by the elbows, and lifted him off the ground. Then they trotted smartly through the doorway. Hey, said Two-Flower as they hurried down the corridor. Where, as they stopped in front of another door, is my, as they dragged the door open, luggage? He landed in a heap of what once might have been straw. The door banged shut, its echoes punctuated by the sounds of bolts being slammed home. The other self, Run, had barely blinked. Okay, he said. What is the second test? You must kill my 2 brothers, Run. Harun considered this. Both at the same time, or one after the other, he said. That is an important question. Consecutively, or concurrently, she assured him. What? Just kill them, she said sharply. Good fighters, are they? Renowned. So in return for all this, you will wed me and become Lord of the Wormburg. It was a long pause. Run's eyebrows twisted themselves in unaccustomed calculation. I get you and this mountain, he said at last. Yes. She looked him squarely in the eye, and her lips twitched. The fee is worthwhile, I assure you. Run dropped his gaze to the rings on her hand. The stones were large, being the incredibly rare blue milk diamonds from the clay basins of Mythos. When he managed to turn... I almost said Mithros. Oh my god, Tamara Pierce. When he managed to turn his eyes from them, he saw Liessa glaring down at him in fury. So calculating, she rasped. Harun the barbarian who would boldly walk into the jaws of death himself. Run shrugged. Sure, he said. The only reason for walking into the jaws of death is so you can steal his gold teeth. He brought one arm around expansively, and the wooden bunk was at the end of it. It cannoned into the bowman, and Harun followed it joyously, felling one man with a blow and snatching the weapon from another. A moment later it was all over. Liessa had not moved. Well, she said. Well, what? Said Harun from the carnage. Do you intend to kill me? What? No, this is just, kind of a habit. Just keeping in practice. So where are these brothers? He grinned. Shit. Two-Flower sat on his straw and stared into the darkness. He wondered how long he'd been there. Hours, at least. Days, probably. He speculated that perhaps it had been years and he had simply forgotten. I feel like it's been like 5 minutes. No, that sort of thinking won't do. He tried to think of something else. Grass, trees, fresh air, dragons. Dragons. There was the faintest of scrabblings in the darkness. Two-Flower felt the sweat prickle on his forehead. Something was in the cell with him. Oh, boy. Something that made small noises, but even in the pitch blackness gave the impression of hugeness. He felt the air move. When he lifted his arm, there was that greasy feel and faint shower of sparks that betokened a localized magical field. Two-Flower found himself fervently wishing for light. A gout of flame rolled past his head and struck the far wall. As the rocks flashed into furnace heat, he looked up at the dragon that now occupied more than half the cell. Well, he did want to see one. I obey, Lord, said a voice in his head. What? 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 By the glow of the crackling, spitting stone, Two-Flower... I'm sorry. By the glow of the crackling, spitting stone, Two-Flower looked into his own reflection in two enormous green eyes. Beyond them, the dragon was as multi-hued, horned, spiked, and lithe as the one in his memory. A real dragon. Its folded wings were nevertheless still wide enough to scrape the wall on both sides of the room. It lay with him between its talons. Obey, he said, his voice vibrating with terror and delight. Of course, Lord. The glow faded away. Two-Flower pointed a trembling finger at where he remembered the door to be, and he said, Open it! The dragon raised its huge head. Again the ball of flame rolled out, but this time, as the dragon's neck muscles contracted, its color faded from orange to yellow, from yellow to white, and finally to the faintest of blues. By that time, the flame was also very thin, and where it touched the wall, the molten rock spat and ran. When it reached the door, the metal exploded into a shower of hot droplets. Black shadows arced and there's a lot of G's in that. I think that's a typo. And jiggered over the walls. The metal bubbled for an eye-aching moment, and then the door fell in two pieces in the passage beyond. The flame winked out with a suddenness that was almost as startling as its arrival. Two-Flower stepped gingerly over the cooling door and looked up and down the corridor. It was empty. The dragon followed. The heavy door frame caused it some minor difficulty, which it overcame with a swing of its shoulders that tore the timber out and tossed it to one side. The creature looked expectantly at Two-Flower, its skin rippling and twitching as it sought to open its wings in the confines of the passage. How did you get in there? Said Two-Flower. You summoned me, master. I don't remember doing that. In your mind. You called me up. In your mind, thought the dragon patiently. You mean I just thought of you and there you were? Yes. It was magic. Yes, but I've thought about dragons all my life. In this place, the frontier between thought and reality is probably a little confused. All I know is that at once I was not, and then you thought me, and then I was. Therefore, of course, I am yours to command. What the hell? Good grief. Half a dozen guards chose that moment to turn the bend in the corridor. They stopped, open-mouthed. Then one remembered himself sufficiently to raise his crossbow and fire. The dragon's chest heaved. The quarrel exploded into flaming fragments in mid-air. The guards scurried out of sight. A fraction of a second later, a wash of flame played over the stones where they had been standing. Two-Flower looked up in admiration. Can you fly too? He said. Of course. Two-Flower glanced up and down the corridor and decided against following the guards. Since he knew himself to be totally lost already, any direction was probably an improvement. He edged past the dragon and hurried away, the huge beast turning with difficulty to follow him. They padded down a series of passages that crisscrossed like a maze. At one point, Two-Flower thought he heard shouts, a long way behind them, but they soon faded away. Sometimes the dark arch of a crumbling doorway loomed past them in the gloom. Light filtered through dimly from various shafts, and here and there bounced off the big mirrors that had been mortared into angles of the passage. Sometimes there was a brighter glow from a distant light well. What was odd, thought Two-Flower as he strolled down a wide flight of stairs and kicked up billowing clouds of silver dust motes, was that the tunnels here were much wider, and better constructed, too. There were statues and niches set in the walls, and here and there faded but interesting tapestries had been hung. They mainly showed dragons. Dragons by the hundred, in flight or hanging from their perch rings, dragons with men on their backs hunting down deer and sometimes other men. Two-Flower touched one tapestry gingerly. The fabric crumbled instantly in the hot, dry air, leaving only a dangling mesh where some threads had been plaited with fine gold wire. Bless this book, but what is happening? Okay, I'm going to make another video and then keep reading.